This video is meant to help to familiarize you with the menu structure in the Onset E50B2 power meter. Strongly recommend you have a look at the manual as well. It's pretty straightforward. You just basically scroll up and down and right to left to get to the different menu choices. The device outputs 3 sets of pulses: amp hours, watt hours, and VAR hours are represented by those pulses, and then we can calculate other variables from those 3 sets of pulses. This video is also embedded in a training course that we have online called Using HOBO Data Loggers for Monitoring Energy, and here's the link. I strongly recommend you have a look at that. You don't have to go through the whole course. You can select the section that you're interested in from the menu. You're not required to watch the whole thing from beginning to end. So let's have a look at this video.
We'll plug it in, and you'll see it powered up. It's already configured for this 3-phase application, so it's kind of scrolling through some things. But basically, to configure it, you just down arrow through the menus until you find setup. There's setup, right click. Password is defaulted to zeros. You can change that if you want to, so we're just going to right click our way through it, and it lets us into the configuration for CTs. So we right click on that, and you can see the CT is set for a 333 millivolt output. So that's correct for the CTs we're using. It supports 333 or 1 volt output full scale. So you can see that. You can change it to 1, but we want to leave it at 0.33. And this is where you can put in the size for your application. Matt was using 50 amp CTs, so and we save it. And now our CT size is configured. We down arrow and we get to the system configuration, and this is where we can configure it for a Y or a delta configuration in a 3-phase, or if it's single phase or split phase. So we right arrow, and you can see here it is set for 3-line 1 neutral, which is what Matt was showing in his video. If you wanted to change that, if you arrow down, 3-line only is a delta configuration. 3L1 neutral is a Y configuration. 2-line 1 neutral is what they call split phase. 2-line without a neutral. And there's 1 line with a neutral if you were configured for single phase. And then back. So we want to use that. Down arrow. PT is if you want to put a potential transformer on here. If you wanted to configure this logger to log something higher than 600 volts, you would use the potential transformer. And it will step it down. We don't need to worry about that here. Voltage is where we can put in what our expected voltage is. And again, this is just used for calculating what we think our maximum power is going to be. Oops. We can make sure that's correct. Just right arrow through it and it'll save it. And again, power is just how much calculated expected power we see. The important, probably the most important set of parameters we want to set are the S-pulse. S-pulse is giving a pulse weight to the actual pulses that are coming out. So we're getting pulses that are watt hours, amp hours, and VAR hours. And that's what we're logging with our HOBO data logger, and we're going to post-process that data. Either HOBOware is going to do it for us, or we have to do it in a spreadsheet if we're using like an LU30 or an energy logger or the RX3000. So it's important to not only get these pulse widths correct based on your application, and there's a lookup table in the manual. This is very handy, and it's color-coded, so it's very easy to follow, but you want to make sure you put in the right pulse weights for the number of phases you're monitoring and the size CT and voltage range. So we want to get into S-pulse, right-click. Watt hours and VAR hours per pulse are basically when you set watt hours, you're also setting a pulse weight 4 var hours. So for this application, we do want 1. They will go up in increments of 10, so if it was 10 or 100, you can change that. Right arrow. One thing that's a little confusing, or can be confusing in the manual, is that the menu displays amp hours, our setting as amp hours as milliamp hours to cut down on the number of decimal points, decimal places that are displayed on the LCD. So in the manual it may say 0.001 amp hours, that's 1 milliamp hour. So that's what we're going to use here. This is correct. The other setting you can change is the milliseconds per pulse, which is the pulse width. There are explanations in the manual about why you want to change that, but for this we're not going to. So we're going to get ourselves out again. We finished our configuration, and we can see it's scrolling through those measurements for all 3 phases. That's what it says 3 there. If we want to see what each phase is reading, we arrow down again through the menus, and we see C phase. If we right click, see amperage, voltage line to neutral, watts, VAR, VA. Back out of that. Down, there's B phase, all the different variables. Down, and then if we say 3 phase, we can see what the total is for each.